You're listening to the Irish Rally Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by FAC, the simply automatic choice for automation equipment for gates, doors, barriers and rising bollards. Available from your security installer and electrician. Distributed to the trade in Ireland North and South by National Automation, the one-stop distributor for automation equipment, door entry intercom systems, CCTV, intruder and fire alarms, access control and locks. For more information, visit nal.ie/products. Hello everyone and welcome along to the second episode of Season 2 here on the Irish Rally Podcast. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who got in touch after the first episode of the new series, which of course was part 1 of the Austin MacHale story, and the feedback really has been tremendous over the past week and a half. At the start of Season 1, we set out our stall to give Irish rallying a voice, and to help give the sport the coverage it used to get back in the 80s, 90s and noughties, and ultimately the coverage it deserves. And as a result of you, our loyal listeners, we made it to number 1 in the Irish charts this past week, which initially I thought might have been an April Fool's joke, but at the time of recording here now on the 8th of April 2021, the Irish Rally Podcast remains on top of the charts in our category. It's also been revealed in a post by feedspot.com that the Irish Rally Podcast is among the top 15 rally podcasts in the world, and we're in good company as Crunching Gears, the Sprint Podcast and the Stage by Stage Way are also named. So with 4 podcasts that relate to Irish rallying in the top 15 in the world, it's fair to say that the sport has got an improved amount of coverage, not just on the island of Ireland, but indeed all over the world. So thanks again to you, the listeners, and if you listen on your iPhone or iPad, tapping the 5 stars on the Apple Podcast app, which is built into those devices, really does help the profile of the show and gets us up the charts, which ultimately means more exposure for Irish rallying, and also reviews are most welcome and can be done so anonymously if you wish. You can also hit the follow button on Spotify and the subscribe button on YouTube. Okay, so let's get into the action with our second and final part of the Austin MacHale story. We pick up where we left off with Austin talking about the fabulous Toyota Celica ST185.
The 185 was very competitive as well, Toyota, but they were still in the World Championship, and that was the KEM 703, which is a fairly well-known car. So it was a very lucky car, really, because we won 2 championships in sort of 97 and 98, and that was something like, I think it was 14 starters, 2 wins and 2 seconds or something like that, you know. So it was probably one of my favourite cars, the 185, because it was really bulletproof in a way, you know. So we had a lot of close battles, obviously, with Bertie and then years and Kenny and the rest of the lads that were there, because most sport in Ireland, they were the golden years, really, sort of the early 90s to mid 90s.
They were great times, Austin, and they're, heading towards, I suppose, the late 90s in particular is when I remember going to rallies as a young lad and absolutely loving that particular car, the battles with Bertie, etc., etc. But, from your point of view, the next championship you won after 86 was 97. Little did you think that there was going to be 11 years between, those championship titles, because it was quite a long time. So this was the dream car to get you back up on the horse again and get you back on the podium and top of the podium.
Yeah, well, probably we didn't from sort of 90, 93 on, 93, 94, 95, 96. We didn't do a lot, we only did maybe 2 or 3 rallies instead a year. But when we got the new car, the 185, and we had a big push with Toyota Ireland and Castra, which was the Toyota Finance as well. So, the funds were there, and to run the car, we were backing from Pirelli. So it made all the difference to be back competitive again, and Brian Murphy came with me full time then, and Brian made a big difference. He was a very good, consistent co-driver, and I think it's the thing that's when that time was all fully paced. Now you have to really trust your co-driver and believe what he says, and otherwise you're at nothing. But Brian made a huge difference, at the start of the years.
98 in particular then is a real kind of standout season. Obviously you went and put those titles back to back again. The second time you did back to back titles in your career, and it gave you your 5th overall, which was fantastic and record breaking, of course. But in that 98 season it was full of drama from the get-go. So you had a fantastic win obviously in Galway, but then we had big controversy on the circuit and then subsequently on the lakes as well. So maybe you'll talk us through those.
I think, we won Galway, I think, in 98. Yeah, we won Galway to start with the 185. And then obviously the circle was the big battle. It was a major battle all weekend. We dropped a bit of time at the start with a puncher or whatever it was, and we were sort of a couple of minutes down or thereabouts on Bertie. So we put it right back down to the last stage, really, with the Hamilton's Folly. And we've got fast time on other stages on the way up. And as I said before, it's easier being the greyhound than the hare. In a way, when you're chasing somebody, you keep getting time back. And some of the stage was then up around South Armagh as well, which would be Brian Murphy territory, which helped a bit. And he was very confident on those stairs then, and the stages in that area. And but as I said, the last stage was Hamilton's Folly, and we were 25 seconds down. Now we're 25 seconds down on Berkeley, but we had road penalties, which was Ryan was called into arrival control at the start of it, but the third stage, and Marshall, the best of their wisdom, called him in early. And when we went in, she tried to penalise him a minute for being a minute early, which was, I think it was 20 seconds or whatever it was at the time. So obviously a row up there with the club, with Marshall and Brian, etc. But that would be probably we'll appeal it anyway, and it mightn't matter one way or the other at the end of the event is what the club were trying to say, but they didn't realise at the end of the event that it did matter, because we had won the rally by a second, and if we had the penalty, we had lost it by 19 seconds or whatever. So that was the way it went. But we had to go, like I mean, on the last stage that year on the circuit, which was about 18 or 20 miles, and it was really a flat out stage. Stage are the stages I like because it's very bumpy, crest, tight, twisty in areas, and you need a good solid car for it. And we had, it was either go for it or not, and so we had to go flat out, and we got it by 20. We beat Berkeley by 26 seconds on the stage in the end. That's what we won the rally by one. So
without creating much deal of controversy, I think you kind of made it known before that particular motor club that dealt with that situation mightn't have been your favourite to deal with out of all the motor.
There wouldn't have been, no, like I think the USC is the USC, but sure, that's water on the bridge now. Like obviously, the likes of Galway was really good. And I remember one year in Galway, we was back in the 70s, and we were doing the Escort twin cam, and the engine problem before the start of the event, and we got a car from Budget here in Dublin. Budget was a car company. I can't remember what the name it was. And they gave the car for the rally. But we had to ring the motor club, and Brian Brophy was the guy that's looking after the entries. He's looking after practically everything in the rally. So he said, right, you can get down here before 3 o'clock. I do a scrutiny, sign on, and give you the route and all before for the start of the rally. And that was the likes of Galway, what Galway would do for you. The really spectacular and that. And the likes of the USC, you wouldn't even bother ringing them because you waste time.
So from one controversy, Austin, we moved on to the next one with Charlie Lakes. And in that particular one, obviously, I remember Bertie going out early on the first day on Miles Gap, but James Leckie gave a kind of a virtuoso performance, and you guys went hell for leather throughout that event, and you encountered a little bit of difficulty then coming near the end of the rally. And I remember actually being outside Glen Eagle, and for a while people didn't know who was after winning it. So your memories of that one?
Yeah, well, after the circuit, obviously, the Lakes, there was no really controversy in the Lakes rally. James Leckie won the event. We were leading the rally by I think it was 2 stages to go by something like 3 minutes, and we had a wishbone break. It was cracked, but they decided the lads in the Wilson to try out the wishbone, welded it, and put it back in. And took out the wishbone and welded it, and but then they couldn't get it back in. So in a way we got it in eventually, but we were late to start the next stage, and what had happened was the arrival control was not in the position it should have been in. The marshals who was at the arrival control had moved back down because there were long queue of cars. There was a hold up maybe about 20 cars, 30 cars, and when we came, we should have got our time we got our arrival time, which dropped us maybe, I think, about 12 minutes, 14 minutes. And the whole thing was with the road penalties was in a bit of a mess. So I think that Mike Marshall or whoever, the COC at the time, started deciding to drop the road penalties for the rally because of all the traffic hold up, etc. And that meant and we'd have won the rally. But I don't think on stage times we would have won the rally, but if they dropped the road penalties, if the road penalty stayed, James Leckie would have won it. But I think in the wisdom and decided to leave, which we were agreeable to. We were asked what did we think. We said, well, if the road penalties are there, if we have road penalties, we should be penalised, and that's it, because the previous rally we had the same problem over road penalties, and at that time it was illegal what the UAC had done. But I don't think it would be fair for James Leckie, I think his first international, to have lost it over road penalties being suspended.
Yeah, well, that's great sportsmanship on your behalf, I have to say, in fairness to you now. So that has to be handed to you on that one. Like, but all these. Can you remember, was all that unfolding actually at the ramp?
No, well, it was because there was what they actually decided to do. I think it was the first 5 cars to make any road penalties or anything would stand. And anything after that, all road penalties were gone, because it probably didn't really affect. I don't know how we affect that on the field afterwards, but I think it probably would have been unfair. The only difference it made in the first 5 was between us and Leckie, who was second at the time, 1-2. So it reversed to 1-2. So they asked us what did we think. We said, we take our penalties and we take it on the chin. And Brian Murphy was asking me, said, I think it's probably the best thing to do in the interest of sport.
Well, fair play to you. What goes around comes around, because I suppose in the heel of the hunt, you had the second place finish in Donegal. There was a problem with the car 20. You were due to do that, but I think you pulled out kind of late in the day. There was an issue with the car maybe the night before or something, Austin, I think, as far as I can remember.
Yeah, we had a problem with an engine problem with the 185, but we had the championship won anyway. So we didn't do the event. Something got to do with the ECU. We couldn't get we had trying to use the ECU and I couldn't get the car to run properly, and people then and Brennan couldn't get it to work, and there was no point because it was like burning the hole in the piston. The car wasn't running properly, it's intermittent, and there was no point in doing that because the engine wasn't allowing it.
So you were champion in 98, and obviously that's when you brought the record, five-time champion, a record which still stands today. So that was remarkable, obviously very special at the time.
Yeah, it was good. Like, the car we've won the championship twice and won the international that we had in second, and we've done a few of the national rounds, like the Aer Lingus one and down in Port Felicia, and there's a lot of other bits and pieces where the car was competitive. We're very happy with it. So it was moving on into 99, and Galway we broke a spigot shaft, the main shaft with a gearbox at the start line of the first stage, and after winning the previous, you were first in the road and Bertie was right behind us. And we sort of looked up to the clouds like it is too. So probably taking the goal out of the rally for him as well, the fact that we had just gone and hadn't even got over the start line of the first stage. So that was a bit disappointing, and then the battle will recommence on the surface. So we were, I can't remember where we were lying at the time, but we were on the first 2 or 3, I think it was 3 Andrew, Bertie, and ourselves. Was a 3-way battle, and the last stage before we came out of the north, out of Armagh, to cross the border and out over our crest, car got out of that light, and one side was the backwards down the road, and a much publicised accident. Were very lucky because there was a triangle in the middle of down to the T junction, a triangle in the middle of the T junction, and there was a lot of press photographers there, and we're lucky we got down one side of the man. We didn't hit anybody. We went backwards into the ditch and rolled onto the roof. That was the end of that.
Yeah, it was a massive accident. Very, very lucky, I suppose, that nobody was hurt, yourself from blind spectators, media, the whole lot. But remarkably, a couple of weeks later, you had the car ready for Killarney. I'm sure there was frantic hours put in trying to get that ready.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, the car wasn't that badly damaged as such, because when we rolled over, it looked worse than anything else. But there was smoke from underneath the bonnet when we landed, and it was Brian was the first to get out on his side, got his door open and the window open and get out, and we'd actually climb out through the window. So it wasn't as bad as what it looked, and it was kind of straightened up, and with Killarney we finished in the first 5 in Killarney, 4 or something like that. In Killarney that year we had problems. I can't remember what it was. The Sleek was probably starting to come to the end of its competitiveness then. The things were moving on, and Sleek was finished with Toyota for a couple of years prior to that, because they were starting developing the Corolla. or that the 205 is probably first after the 185. There's 205 for a few years, and then coming after Corolla. So the 185 was running out of strength really in a way.
Yeah. So with that Corolla, then I actually remember being down to Stone Throwers and the first event in that car, left-hand drive at the time. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought I recalled there was a conversion to right-hand drive. Was it actually the same car converted, or did you go with a different Corolla for 2000?
No, it was the same car. It was the one Corolla we have. It didn't have the second one.
So you converted that. You converted it from left-hand drive then to right-hand drive, as I thought, and there was a bit of hassle with that then, wasn't there? Were you getting some difficulty with that transition that led to some mechanical problems?
Yeah, well, after Donegal, we were about 4 to Donegal, and then after that, then we did a rally in Madeira, which was very interesting. Towards the end of '99, was one of these European Championship rounds, and it was actually the first time that we met Sebastian Loeb on that event. He won the event, so it was very interesting to do. And the first time we met him, he was only starting up, and he was driving for Citroën at the time, so we finished European, I don't know, it wasn't World Championships, European, and we finished, I don't know where, it was third or fourth or something in the class, but it was very interesting. And then that was the last event we really did with this league, with the 185, and we moved on to the Corolla then, as you were saying, and the first two events we did in the Corolla, it was with KM166, was in the Tom Hogan Motors, which is David Hogan, was the major sponsor with me for a year from Galway. It was made Toyota dealer in Galway and Edison in Clare. So you only have to find a garage at that time there in Tipperary and Clare. So we did the Stone Throwers for that. We won the Stone Throwers, which was good for him for that, to make rather than garages and that,
Mm-hmm.
So we did that, and then we did the AMC in Portlaoise, and we won that as well. So it was a good start for the Corolla, So moving on, then we moved on to what was next would be, we had the Corolla for the year 2000.
There was an issue that year with the championship, I think, and there was some sort of a delay. The Summit Rally came in anyway because a couple of events didn't run. I think the Summit was a substitute for the lack of events anyway, if I remember correctly.
I think we won Galway. I know we had 3 wins in the trot with the Corolla at the start, and Galway was the third one. And in Killarney, I know we retired with a gearbox problem. And then that year was the year that Bertie ran the Fisher Engineer and Summit Rally up in Sean Quinn's quarry. So
an incredible event.
Yeah, it was very impressive because we were sort of starting from Malin across into Cavan, and it was incredible. Like, the way that motorsport that year was, a bit like it is now at the moment with the pandemic, so that was done, that year we did that, and then there was I can't remember, I think Cockburn was second or third, and what we did, I think we did the Rally Bar that year as well, down in France.
Yeah, 6th overall there, and then into 2001. Look, this was a disaster of a year altogether. Like, I mean, it started off so badly with the death of the Fishers. Like, I mean, such a tragedy. Yeah,
the tragedy with the Fisher family was the start of 2001 in January. But I'll never forget it. Really, it was really, really, really a tragedy, and really put everything back foot really for the year. So especially after having the Summit Rally. You involved so much the previous 2 years or prior to that,
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was really sad. I lost a lot of the interest in motorsport really after that. So we didn't do a lot that year.
And just in around that time, then did you started focusing, I think, a bit on the British Championship. So you mentioned there you kind of lost interest a little bit when. The untimely death of Bertie, which is such a great tragedy, and Mark and Emma, as you mentioned, like, and obviously another great tragedy in 2002, Austin, with Frank Marr, like, and if we can just come to you on that for a moment, like, three unbelievable drivers, Bertie, Mark, and Frank, like, and to lose 3 giants of motorsport like that in the space of a couple of years, it was just, you can't even put into words how bleak that was for Irish rallying.
Yeah, that's obviously with Bertie and Mark gone in 2001. I think the thing is just the following year we're actually down in Ballinath, the Mayo Stages card. Aaron was doing it. And there's that evening, he got a phone call, bad news about poor Frank, he was only out testing my car or something on the road. Jeez, and there wasn't a great couple of years now, to be honest.
Was that, if you don't mind me asking, was that kind of a factor in maybe going over and competing in the British Championship as well? Did you want something different? Did you want to be away from it? And
No, I wouldn't say that. Yeah, but it lost a lot of the interest. Like, I mean, a lot of the people that I was competing with over the years, two of them are gone anyway. Yeah. And Andrew was still there, and Kenny and James Cullen or whatever. But we decided to do the British Championship in the Corolla. And we won the Welsh and second and thirds and fourths and fifths and accidents and rows and everything else that goes with it. But it was enjoyable enough, because we had done the British Championship earlier on in the 70s and the 80s and the RAC and stuff like that. So, in 2002, it was sort of spread out. We did Donegal and we didn't finish Donegal and had to punch down back again for the Cork 20 and tired. So there was a lot of different things with Corona that didn't go that well. It was a very hard car to get handling right in because there was no work done this year. Any work to be done, you had to really do it here, spend the time on it, and I didn't have the time. We just went from there, and we started at the end of 2002. We sort of sold the Corolla and we moved on to the Subaru for a few events. And a few wins in that. We won the Circuit Area. And then we continued with the Circuit of Ireland with a third, I think, and the Pirelli. We won Pirelli. We're first 10 or something of the Pirelli. And we did the British Championship, but we didn't start it in time, so we finished, I think, for second, the British Championship that year, So
second 3 years in a row as well.
In the British Championship, I can't remember exactly what it was, but yeah, we had good results in it,
You did, yeah, because the first time you came second, you were in the Subaru, and then you moved on to the Focus, and you had that for 2 years in the British Championship when you made a big assault on it. Now, one of those years as well, Brian actually ended up winning the co-drivers championship, so he's the British champion winning co-driver. I think due to the fact perhaps that David Higgins rotated co-driver so much.
Yeah, I think Brian, we see what happened with us. Then I suppose we were really that keen to try and win the British Championship. It didn't really mean a lot to me to win the British Championship as such, not because of the championship, but our backing was all coming from Ireland, and the Irish Championship, the Irish rallies were much more important. And unfortunately, with Galway, with David Hogan and Tom Hogan Motors and the Toyota end, even though we're in a Focus at that stage, David was still on the side of the car, was on the side of all of my cars, and we'd always do Galway at the start of the year, and that meant that we missed which used to be the Mintex, and then it was I can't remember what was the name of the first round then. But it meant that it cost us dearly in a way, because had we done that event for in 2004 and 2005, we'd have won the British Championship twice, which was a bit disappointing that we should have done that. But like I said, we hadn't that huge interest in it. But Brian won the British Championship for the co-drivers end on the results that we had, with sort of a maybe half-hearted effort for a better description. But you see, Garrett was starting to do some of the British Championship rounds as well with the Peugeot at the time. So that was part of the reason why I did the rounds to be there, and for assistance for him, because he was starting to move into sport instead of Garrett at the time, So
and
that was part of that,
On that as well, Brian, it was actually 2004 that Brian won the co-drivers championship, so he's British champion with a co-driver, and that was when, as we said, David Higgins was rotated or whatever. So yeah, the 3 years, 2003, 4 and 5, you were runner up in the British Championship. But 2005 also was a special year, as you said. I think 2005 on the records is the year that Garrett used the Corolla and won the Forestry Championship. So that was a very what do you call it, convenient and efficient use of a car that you used to own, and very special as well that Garrett actually won a championship in it, starting off like.
Yeah, well, he won the Irish Forestry Championship. He won every round bar one. He could have won them all, but he was starting to come into the WRC. It's a fair move for him at a young age because the Corolla was at the top of the WRC at the time, and as I said, we got a Focus in as well, so he sort of stuck with the Corolla at the time, and then he moved to the Focus. We had an 05 Focus, and he moved to that in, I think that was about 2006. The 2005, he had done the British in the Peugeot, and that was the year that we had the win in the Welsh, and Garrett won the class and all the Welsh. So, that made it a good weekend for us and that. I can't remember exactly his results, but they were all competitive, and I think he finished up runner up in the Peugeot Cup there, whatever they had at the time, so before he moved into the Corolla, doing the Irish Tarmac Championship, doing the Irish Forestry Championship.
Yeah.
It was a fair start from us then.
It was, and then in 06, of course, 6th overall in Rally Mexico. Serious going, like. Yeah,
he had moved at that time to the Focus, and he did about 10 rounds in the World Championship and with M Sport, and which was very good for me. He had a good result, and with Malcolm Wilson's young lad, Matthew Winston was as well, and the two of them are about, I think Matthew's probably a couple of years older than Gareth, and he was obviously very competitive as well. So, there was a good match between the two of them. They were tit for tat the whole time, it was a good benchmark for Gareth as well. And of course, they were looking at the time to get the World Championship to Ireland, with Ronan Morgan and the rest of the gang. So, that was coming down the line as well,
Absolutely, and I will come to that, because that was very, very special. I know how much of a part you played in making that happen, but also, competing, the three is competing together, yourself, Garrett, and Aaron, so we'll definitely come to that in a few moments' time. But 2007 was a very special year for Aaron, as he won the national championship with Killian Duffy in 07. So you had Garrett winning the forestry in Ireland in 05, Aaron moving on in 07 and winning the national championship. And we'll come to 2010 when Garrett won the Tarmac Championship as well in a few moments. But serious strides made by the next generation, and you must have been such a proud dad at that stage, like.
Yeah, when I stepped back a fair bit, sort of from 2006 on, 2007 I did very little. I think Aaron was doing a lot around in the car that I used, the 03 Focus as we call them, and he had won, as you say, won the national championship in it, and he had done some of the 05 as well. So there was two Focuses at the time. Just mad amount of cars to have. But anyway, it was great for Aaron to win the national championship, and he had only 4 or 5 outright wins, which is important. And I think with both of them, the outright win more than a championship in a way. That they were concentrating on, and Aaron had a fair few outright wins, and Garrett got the 60th in Mexico, which is a fantastic result up against the cream of the world. He had Sebastian Loeb and all these guys, Bunthome, and all the Finnish guys there, Hervonen, and all there at that time. So it was very, very competitive in the World Championship then, because you had a lot of different manufacturers, Ford, Subaru, and all the rest of them there as well.
Yeah. So talk to us about Rally Ireland then. So 3 Focuses out in 07 in Rally Ireland. 3 from the one family, like a really unique thing. 3 people from the one family competing on the event. I'll double that up, you can elaborate on that one for us, because that is really, really special. But the makings of the event in the first place, you've briefly touched on it. There was some making in that, there was years of preparation in that.
Yeah, Kevin, that's correct. 2007, actually 2006 was when the whole thing started for Rally Ireland, with Ronan and getting around of the WRC, and based in Sligo, and Garrett did the first event in 2006. It was a pre-event for the World Championship at the time, and they moved on for the following year. So, we had 3 Focuses at the time. Garrett was doing the World Championship, and he was after very major results in a lot of the rounds we said earlier with Mexico, etc. And he was using the 06 car, and Aaron was after winning the national championship in the 05, and I still had the old 03. So I definitely want to do Rally Ireland. So we did it in 2007, and I think I can't remember what the results were, but I know that we got punched, we were off the road, and a couple of different things, but Garrett was probably in the first 10, I'd say, at least, and Aaron.
8 overall for Garrett, and I think 12th overall for Aaron, so.
Yeah, it was something like that. So, it was a very competitive rally. That was the year that Grumden had the famous accident there out near Sligo, and I think Sebastian Loeb won it, as far as I can remember.
Right,
and
yeah, correct.
Sordo was second.
Sordo second, yeah, and Leffel third.
Leffel third, yeah. So, it was very competitive times for motorsport in Ireland, and then 2008, was quite enough. I didn't do anything like at that stage. I wasn't really concentrating too much on the motorsport end, and then you had Rally Ireland back again in 2009. So I think Seb won it again, and the whole event ran very well. Based again in Sligo, going up into some stages in the north, so back down to Fermanagh, etc. And we were disappointed, really, in a way that that was the last round of the World Championship this year, because there's a huge effort put into it, and it's a very expensive round of the championship in motorsport. So you need major backing in that. But it was good to get, and it was good to get for Ronan to get it here for the first 2 years.
So financially, obviously, it wasn't a runner. I think that was the main reasons for it not being continued. But in the last couple of years, there is a big, strong push for it again, maybe under the guise of Rally GB, but still on this island, which will be a major boost if it does come off.
Well, yeah, that's true. It's the tourist board. I think it's the tourist board in Northern Ireland that they're talking about putting money in this year, or for next year, that it was for this year. Yeah, the Rally Wales has been over the years backing from the Welsh government, and I think to run Rally Ireland here, nearly all the World Championship rounds are backed by their government to put in the necessary finance, because you have to look at the big picture, you have to look at the tourism, and you have to look at everything else. It is a major show, and you have to look at everything else that goes with it. So unfortunately, that wasn't forthcoming back in 2007 and 2009, and it sort of fizzled out at the time, because just couldn't keep putting the money into it and not coming back to any advantage without getting a major sponsor. So that was sort of the last year. They're trying to get it back again through Bobby Willett. It'd be probably just a run around Northern Ireland. I don't know what he's thinking on or that, but it won't be. It won't be based in the north and south like it was when Ronan was running it. So that was the end of that. That's when it went. Then we moved on to 2010, and Garrett won the championship in 2010, and it's the first time that father son has won the Tarmac championship. So overall, I had really backed out for the time. I hadn't done any rally since Rally Ireland. I had done nothing in 2008. I only did one rally, Rally Ireland, in 2009, and I haven't done that many in 2007. So, sort of all coming to an end, getting too old anyway. Time to step down.
Well, Garrett winning that championship, though, that was, as you say, first father and son to do it. Pretty special day.
Yeah, well, I think it was brilliant with Aaron winning the national, and as I said earlier, he had a lot of national wins, and then Garrett come along and he had a good few international wins. He was doing the Tarmac, and Aaron was doing the national, and to win the championship, he won the Galway a couple of times. He had won Galway. He won practically everything that I had won, and he won the championship, and we're all very proud as a family for himself, and Paul Nagel was with him then, and to win the Tarmac, it's the first time it happened here, and which was nice.
Surely was, and just the run in the M3 in 2011 up in Mayo with Brian as well, in the extra vision stripes and the whole job. That was pretty cool, going back all the years, kind of a retro rewind sort of a job. Yeah,
it wasn't actually our M3. It was an M3 that a friend of mine, Billy Coogan, had. And our car was sold in States, actually, the original ADZ. But it was nice to do the car, to do that event in the car. Which was interesting, because the car wasn't really set up for anything here. It wasn't set up for Mayo stages, which is all bumpy, wet. Again, and the first stage was a bit of a baptism to try and keep it on the road. But we swapped it on, fairly rapid on it, and we had no test on it really. And at the end of the day, we had the M3 back being competitive again. But that's the last event I've done, which was 10 years ago now. So
you'll dust it off again at the other stage, or another point in time, of course, and you'll definitely have a go at some sort of event, surely.
Well, sure. We're still alive, and this pandemic is keeping everybody quiet at the moment, so we have to do that anyway.
It sure is. I have a few quick fire ones. The first question I have, you've had some major offs in your time. We know Knockalla and 89 going off at Will Hare's Corner. You mentioned the spin up on top of Knockalla. the off in the circuit, and the other big off in Donegal and the Corolla. In those seconds, what goes through your mind when you're bracing for impact?
Well, I think, the first thing that you're all conscious is that there's no spectators. Like the one in Donegal with the Corolla was a 6-gear job. And I knew the spectator on the left-hand side. I knew that particular car, and Corolla just let go. And we cleared the bank, and, I don't know how we didn't get spectators. I was very happy when we landed back in the greens and looked down and seen there was nobody, or no spectators, injured or anything else. And the other big one, of course, was the Seneca on the circuit. To coming down backwards there and not knowing what you're going to hit or where you're going to hit or where you are, it's fairly frightening. But I expected when it hit the bank that we would have just bounced off and kept going. But I didn't know we cleared the bank and landed on the roof of the field. I suppose one of my biggest accidents was really probably with the RS 2000 back in 81, and the year that we had the third in the Mintex, and the next round was the Circuit of Ireland. And we're leading Group 1, as was known at the time, the RS 2000, with something like 12 minutes of a lead over a guy called Mike Stewart, who ended up working with M-Sport, because he did when we were at the Focus years, we've done a lot of dealing with Mike. But anyway, he was lying second, and we were fifth, I think it was, either fifth or sixth, but Per Eklund was ahead of us, and he was running a Group B Toyota at the time, which would be sort of the same as maybe an RS 1800 of that, but we weren't that far behind them. Up in Donegal, up in the Glenties, and I was reading the stage, obviously reading the stage at night on the hedges. It was the year before, it was hay snow, and I was reading it, the road goes straight to the hedges, but there was an over a crest, and a 90 left, suddenly a 90 left, round 18 in over the bank and landed about 50 metres down the field on the roof after rolling about 5 or 6 times, and in the dark, I think, okay, be younger and all then, and probably wouldn't have as much fear as you would have in later years, but it definitely, we were shook after that accident, so I think that would be the biggest, and that is the one with Tabanakala. Tabanakala was with the Seneca, with a spin down the road. You didn't know whether you're going to go clean out over into the sea or whether you're going to hit the bank or whatever, but I've had a few major ones, and I was probably stupid ones as well, that there was very little damage,
An opportunity for a regular drive at a world rally level. Do you think if you were in modern day rallying and you had a bit of backing behind you, no doubt you had the talent, you see what Craig is doing, does that ever come into your head that, you were definitely good enough for a regular drive? Is it something that you ever think about?
No, not really. I had opportunities in the late 1980s to go and compete at World Championships and try and see what we could get or what we couldn't get or what would be available. There was a few opportunities, definitely after the Mentex, and again with Ford after the year with Mark Lovell on the Circuit of Ireland and the Manta. I was happy to stay in Ireland, and I had a business started up in the Blantyre construction business, and I had a very young family. Seven parents were married young, and I had no interest gone for 10 or 11 months a year away from home, away from family, and I just didn't have that interest in the sport. Yes, I do this for the sport, but I prefer to, be home every night and have with family and build up our own business rather than stay in a hotel room. So that, I think that World Championship stuff and that is for if you're single. What Craig is doing 100% and the best of luck to him, and that's brilliant for him. And I think it's the same if you look at over the years with Conor McGray and all these guys. They're all single when they were doing trying to get the World Championship stuff, and you think you take even at the moment, all the guys are up in their 30s and they're all still single, so they're dedicated to the sport, and that's fine. That's the way that you are, But I think it's definitely a single man sport for a lot of the years, anyway. Can
you remember vividly racing Carlos Sainz in Mondello? You were in the Celica, he was in the Corolla.
Yeah, that was really a PR exercise for Toyota. They brought Carlos over in the Corolla to Ireland for a publicity thing, and we're out the night before. Some of the restaurants with Toyota Ireland around the city, and that's in Carlos, and Carlos is very well recognised. I remember when this particular restaurant, and two of the waitresses there were Spanish. And so when the thing who was still at the table, Carlos Sainz, and they were really taken aback. But yeah, they did that was arranged for a race in Montana, something like 10 or 12 laps. And we set it up that fine, the cars go first and I go behind them, and it's going to be competitive. And whoever was quickest would win the race, you know. But I wasn't really sort of being authorised when he'll go first and you follow him, and you're not expected or meant to pass him. We're not saying to be able to. But at the last minute, Carlos decided that he wants to run second. That he wants to be the hound, made me the hare. So I said, well, fair enough. So, you know, you'll have to pass me, so if you're going to win, you know. So that the flag dropped. The whole thing had to go. We're flat out, and yeah, we won the race, which Carlos wasn't impressed with. He said, you should have slowed down at the outside as well. That's what you
The competitive nature of you was never going to let that happen.
I wouldn't do that at home. It was okay if he started ahead of me and I couldn't pass him, fair enough. But I mean, the way he started, if I started ahead of him, you know, and I wasn't going to pass me if I could.
Absolutely. The next generation, you have grandkids obviously. Is there any inkling whatsoever that they might get involved?
Well, they're all probably too young at the moment, bar the eldest grandchild, which is Adam Kelly's his name, and he's been through a lot of the rallies with me. He has a buggy at the moment. He is very competitive. He's very good with GA, but he has a huge interest in motorsport. He's 10 at the moment, and you know, he has a big interest. And then Aaron, eldest, 7, he is gone 7, and he has a huge interest as well. He's actually 7 last November. And then Garrett, Sebastian is interested in sport as well. But like, they're all interested in motorsport, but you know, when they go up with like the GA huge thing as well. All the different stuff, you know. But
I can hazard a guess, Sebastian, who he might be named after. I have a fair idea.
I won't comment on that. His mother might agree.
Yeah. So who knows? It could well happen. Very likely that we'd have another generation. Yeah,
I would think so. Yeah, like I mean, there's we have of 9 grandkids. With seven grandsons and 2 girls, and which is Aaron has 2 girls and 1 boy, and you know, sort of. And I'd say that out the whole lot of them, there probably will be one competitive driver, and we wouldn't be advising them really to go into motorsport because it has changed a lot and gotten very expensive, and you know, what you would pay by year.
Pay by year. Right, here's the quick fire round. So, favourite Irish event?
I'd have to say my favourite event would be golf.
Okay.
And then Donegal.
Okay. Favourite overseas event?
Arnie, let's put it down.
Yeah. Favourite overseas event?
Mexico.
Alright. Favourite car?
185 Sneaker.
Toughest opponent?
30.
Favourite Irish stage?
Ballacbeema in Killarney.
Favourite hobby outside of rallying?
GA.
Have you a favourite band, type of music or artist?
Not particularly.
Right. Nothing even generally, nothing at all.
There was a favourite band that we used to always go to called Platform, and they used to play in a place called the Embankment in Saggart, and we used to go there regular on Saturday night, maybe about 6 or 8 of us, and they were brilliant.
Favourite movie?
The Good, the Bad and the Ugly.
Most cherished win?
I have to say the first one.
Right, in 83.
Cork 20.
Austin MacHale, 5 Tarmac Championships, you hold the record. 18 Tarmac Championship event wins. You hold the record for 6 wins in Galway. And also included in that, we have 4 for Cork 20, 2 circuits, 2 in Killarney, 2 in Donegal. I thank you deeply and sincerely for giving up your time. It's been a pleasure sitting down and having this conversation with you.
Kevin, you're 1,000% welcome. Not about whatsoever.
So there you have it, folks, the story of one of Ireland's sporting greats, Mr. Austin MacHale. I'd like to thank Austin, who gave up a large chunk of time in order to get this content together. I have to say it was an absolute pleasure to chat to him, especially as someone who I would have looked up to and been a massive fan of growing up. I'm also keen to get these podcasts to those who may not know how to find it or how to operate technology, be it older or younger. So if you could help do that for relations or friends or anyone you think of that might want to listen to the podcast, that would be very much appreciated, as I'm sure lots of people would have followed Austin MacHale's career with great interest back in the day and might enjoy his stories. Thanks again for listening in, folks, and another quick reminder to hit the 5 stars on Apple and to subscribe and follow for free, also on Spotify, YouTube, and the other podcast apps, and you'll be notified of new episodes there. And you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also email us at irishrallypodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, folks, take care. This podcast is sponsored by FAC, the simply automatic choice for automation equipment for gates, doors, barriers, and rising bollards. Available from your security installer and electrician. Distributed to the trade in Ireland North and South by National Automation, the one-stop distributor for automation equipment, door entry intercom systems, CCTV, intruder and fire alarms, access control, and locks. For more information, visit nal.ie/products.